but right now it's a star project in the open source community. So what makes it so special?
I just wanted to make a solution for one task.
I mean, there's a company already pay other software engineers spend years to build. How come your product can be better than that? 好，大家好，欢迎大家来我们这个开源英雄栏目。我们这个栏目呢是想采访众多各式各样的在开源领域做出特殊贡献的领军人物。今天我们非常高兴邀请到了 ClickHouse 的创始人和 CTO Alexey 来跟我们聊一聊他在这个 ClickHouse 的发展过程中发生的很多事情，以及在开源世界怎么把这个 ClickHouse 做得更大更好，还有这个程序员怎么发展，以及怎么管理一个这么巨大的开源的项目。Alexey, very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Yeah. And then can you introduce yourself to the audience just a bit?
I'm Alexey. I am CTO and co-founder of ClickHouse Inc. I am also the original developer of ClickHouse. I started working on ClickHouse in 2009, if I remember correctly, and continued, and now I am here.
All right. Thank you very much, Alexey. Let's start from ClickHouse. That was a project that you pick up when you are in Yandex, right? So I understand that at that time, Yandex need to do a lot of kind of web analytics, and then ClickHouse was a project to solve that problem, right? So when you started on that project, have you imagined it can grow to this big?
No, I did not imagine that. I did not expect it will go anywhere. I just wanted to make a solution for one task.
So okay, so the question is that there are so many projects inside Yandex, and ClickHouse is just one of the many. But right now it's a star project in the open source community. So what makes it so special?
Actually, it is special because it is not special as other data structures. So other data structures were just too specialized for particular task. And for ClickHouse, we found a way to generalize it to a database management system.
So, but when we talk about database management system, DBMS, that's a very, that term has a long history because there are so many different database systems. So in the early days, would people around you wonder, like, should we pick an external product which is mature, but we might pay money for it, or we start from scratch? Was there debate about that?
Yeah, there is a debate. In my opinion, you should pick already available product first. If it's not prohibitively expensive,
Yes.
and learn from it. And if you will be absolutely confident, but there is no way, instead of implementing something from scratch, then implement something from scratch. But actually, it should work not always like this. Sometimes you have to be slightly ignorant, even ignorant, and try something just to obtain some experience, because how else you will get this experience? If you have spare time, no problem, you can implement your own replacement for Redis, for MongoDB, and maybe, who knows, it will be another ClickHouse.
Interesting. Yeah. Also, I think the more you implement yourself, the more you understand the area. So even though you use another vendor's product, you will have more insight. So maybe you can make a good decision about how to use it.
Yeah. Also, from my experience, I cannot reason about technology if I don't have intuition, intuitive understanding of how it works. I have to feel the technology. I cannot just read the documentation and think, okay, it will work this way, it will work this way. I have to try it by my hands and get this intuition.
Interesting. I think that's a engineer's perspective. Like, I have, if I can make it work, then I understand it. But if I read the documentation, I might be able to pass exam to get some certificate, like some database certificate. But I might not have the intuitive understanding. That's great, because I think computer software, this industry, really rewards those people who are kind of a hands-on. But I mean, there are people who are really good at theory. I mean, that's great. But I think all those, we call it doers, right? They just want to make something happen. I think they usually end up with very good results. So I really like your idea. So you have to tinker,
Yeah.
play with something.
Yeah, and you know, sometimes you can even repeat something already existing. But if you take care of every detail and if you focus on everything, you will do it better.
Yes. Or worse, but yeah, but because people always say, well, see, this product, I mean, there's a company already pay other software engineers spend years to build, and then you just write it for yourself. How come your product can be better than that?
It's difficult, but it happens because
Yes.
if you know better, sometimes you just believe that I will make it better.
Yes. I think one reason might be that those commercial products, I mean, they have long history, which is great. They have a long history of success, but they also have a lot of legacies. Like they have fulfilled the requirement from 20 years ago when they start, and then you cannot cut that feature because some people might use it. But when we start from scratch, you only have your own current requirement, and then the network, the machine, the OS is much different than an old database that it has to take care of. It has to consider so many different constraints that you have almost a new problem to solve. So maybe that's one reason that we can always reinvent, but we reinvent in the sense that there's a new circumstance that maybe your solution, it is better because other people's solution has to take care of 5 different scenarios. So that make the code very complicated. And also, I guess people are unwilling to touch old code base.
Yeah.
Because it might have regressions, break old scenarios. But when you start anew, then you might not have that kind of a baggage, the legacy, the burden.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you know, this legacy is not only about the source code, it's also about organizational structure.
Yes.
It's also about even like something like pricing and financials. Sometimes big companies just cannot improve.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, there's a quite famous book called The Innovator's Dilemma. Right? They say one company by innovation becomes the market leader, but once it becomes market leader, its past success becomes burden that prevents its company to reinvent and kind of doing disruptive innovation. Because, for example, I already have a very successful database. Why change it? let's keep the incremental improvement. Yeah, but someone look at the same problem domain with a new perspective. Say, well, maybe I can do better. But then, if you do not have any other long history or old business model or organizational structure, you are free. Otherwise, in the old ways, it's very hard.
Yeah.
You need to convince a lot of people. Yeah, that itself is very hard. Yeah. So, what triggers that ClickHouse from an internal project to a public open source project?
Before it was made open source and before it was popular in open source, it first started to be popular inside the company.
Yes.
So Yandex was a big company, about 10,000 employees.
10,000?
Yeah, 10,000. with many different departments.
Yes.
And I developed ClickHouse just for one department.
Yes.
But many other departments started to use it.
Mhm.
And then I started to think that maybe ClickHouse is too good for be used
Only
just
one?
in a single company.
Yes. Yes. Great. And then the history proved that you are right. Yeah. So it's right now it's used by many big and small corporations and big and small projects.
Mhm.
And so, in terms of development, do you feel any difference between inside index and right now it's open source? We call it project release cycle management, dealing with requirements and stuff like that.
Not much.
Mhm.
It's more like evolution. Maybe we have to take care about our customers.
Yes.
We have to take it more seriously.
Mhm.
But it is not disruptive. All the practices around open source releases, everything
Yes.
remains.
Yes, but then in the open source playfield, you have, first of all, you have a lot of people that send in issues to you.
Mhm.
So how do you prioritize? Like, oh, this is important, this is not. Like, I guess that's different from inside a company. Right.
The prioritization is about the same.
Mhm.
If you have something like a crash
Yes.
in production,
Okay. Yes.
you have to fix
Fix
it,
it.
and ideally before you go to sleep.
Yes.
The same day, the same hour, you just sit and fix it.
Yes.
Then if you have something like, if you misconfigure HDFS integration with Kerberos authentication,
Mhm.
sometimes the exception message is not understandable.
Uh-huh.
It will get the lowest priority.
Yes, but every issue for the people who open that issue might be urgent.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I imagine that because different. I imagine right now ClickHouse you have paid customers,
Mhm.
and then you also have people who just clone the project and then send you issues,
Mhm.
right? Do you have different release for different tier of customers?
No, we have the same release
The same
cycle.
release.
Yeah.
And then how do you decide that, oh, right now it's good enough to release?
We have release schedule every month, and we release from master branch. And we have continuous integration system with about 2 to 3 millions of test cases run every day.
Mhm.
So we are pretty confident in our releases. Not 100%, it's like 99.999. Sometimes
Yes.
we miss something.
Yes, yes. And is there anything that kind of a funny happened when ClickHouse going to open source? Like how people find out ClickHouse?
Interesting that before
Mhm.
open source, on many conferences, local conferences,
Mhm.
there were talks when people telling, we have implemented a column-oriented database for our company
Mhm.
to do something like analytics,
Okay.
clickstream analytics.
Mhm.
It is proprietary
Mhm.
and it goes nowhere.
Yes.
Then we released ClickHouse,
Mhm.
and these presentations disappear.
Yes. Interesting. So basically, when in a fully open market, the good product will eventually win. Basically, yeah. So maybe I think that's the advantage of an open source environment.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that people just openly compete, right? I mean, if your product is better, then more people will adopt it.
Mhm.
Yeah. Interesting. In a sense, is it true that being open source also give people, the user, confidence because they can look inside the code to see what's wrong?
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Mhm.
And it is one of the advantages.
Mhm.
Even if people never will look at the source code,
Mhm.
they just understand that they don't depend on a single corporation. If they want it, they can self-host them.
Yes, yes. So basically they can say, I can also make changes if
Mhm.
needed.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
people
Mhm.
making these changes.
They are.
Mhm.
So I heard that ClickHouse, the development team is still very small, from the original 5 people to about a dozen.
Currently, if you count only C++ engineers, 25.
25. That's a
Yeah.
very small team.
But there are also other departments: cloud, infrastructure engineers,
Okay.
integrations, front end. There are also sales team.
Oh yes, yes. And so is C++ the critical part of ClickHouse's success? Because I read that you mentioned somewhere that anything that implemented with C++ is much inherently faster.
What alternatives are? Let's list. We can write in
That's
C
before Rust.
before Rust.
Yes.
We can write in C++, in C. Some databases are written in Java,
Yes.
and even some databases in Go. Let's cross out Java and Go by performance, and we left with C and C++. Maybe if you are fancy, you will also list something like Haskell,
Yeah.
but let's also cross out Haskell, because then we will have to hire only PhDs.
Yes. And then they are very hard to find.
Yeah, so C and C++, and you can see that Postgres is written in C. MySQL is in C++, but originally in C, but currently mostly in C++. And C++ has its own advantages and disadvantages.
Yes.
It allows to arrange code and make abstractions much more efficiently than with C. And it is quite difficult to scale the project written in C to a large number of people. And also it is not so easy to make zero-cost abstractions in C. If you take something like just a hash table,
Yes.
hash table in C will look weird comparing to C++.
You mean look very complex?
Yeah, very complex,
Yes.
because you have to use macros
Yes.
instead of templates. You have to use sometimes row pointers, and it will be very unsafe. And
Yes. So basically, C is very like a knife. It's very sharp, but people might hurt themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. And C++ with some overhead, but it can hide the implementation details and can encapsulate information better.
Yeah, but there are disadvantages. C++ is very hard to learn, and
Yes.
you should control yourself when you use it.
Basically, do not get carried away by bringing all the fancy features of C++
Yeah.
into it. Yeah. In some of my old projects, people they say I want to use that fancy one because I want to show how good I am. But it's very hard to maintain.
Yeah.
And it's not necessary because you don't have to use those fancy features to solve a problem. Yeah.
And for us, it is kind of interesting because we enabling every new C++ standard every time. So today we're using C++ 23.
23. Okay.
Yeah, but we don't use all the features.
Yes.
We just enable it in compiler, and we say, okay, you can use it if you will show it for everyone that it makes sense.
Yes.
If everyone will understand.
Yes. Yes. In the inside, that brings to another point. In the open source project, I mean, every participant is passionate. Right? They might sometimes have different opinions in the technical area, not to mention other area. For example, Linux. I mean, people say, well, the Linux is really push for only use C, not C++, and then there's a lot of debate. And was there debate, like technical debate, like people say, well, for example, this feature in C++, a new standard, is much better, we should use it. So how do you resolve it? Because different people have different opinion, but I think the intention is good. They want to make ClickHouse better. But from your perspective, you may say, well, how do you decide?
First, the code should be understandable to all people in the team and also for me.
Okay.
I'm reading this code, I have to understand.
Yes.
And sometimes instead of telling people don't use this, use that, I just say, make an experiment, show it.
Okay.
Maybe we'll have to throw it away, but take your time. You can spend like several days trying, let's say, coroutines.
Yes.
If it will work, fine. If it will be useful and understandable, we will use coroutines.
So basically, we try to use experiments and facts to convince each other. Great. So for when we are working on ClickHouse and doing the release, is that all your full-time job? Because right now you're also traveling, right? When you are traveling and then doing interviews like this, are there any other people doing code reviews, make decisions, or they wait for you?
No. The main challenge is to scale the team.
Yes.
For code reviews, we scale it across all the members of the team.
Okay.
And everyone have to do code review every week.
Okay.
And the same for releases. We have a schedule, daily and weekly schedule.
Okay. Interesting. And then are all the team members using like a mailing list, like using email to talk about issues, or you use the GitHub feature?
We use GitHub and Slack.
Slack.
Unfortunately, Slack, because Slack is very addictive. And
Addictive.
I'm also thinking that Slack is triggering ADHD.
Because there are so many other things happening in Slack that you have to get this. You will get distracted. Yeah, I think. I think that's probably one fact of especially working in a distributed team. I think people will mix life and work. Like people tell jokes in this channel and they talk about work in other channel. I'm not sure if that's true in ClickHouse.
Yeah, I think it's true. So most of the people work remotely, but we also have an office in Amsterdam.
Yes.
And to tell jokes, sometimes we just meet in the office at the kitchen. And we don't have to put everything in Slack. Maybe our colleagues missing that.
Yes. So, how do you solve the time zone issue? For example, if you have collaborators in USA, then the time difference is too much. Maybe you will never be online at the same time, right?
So people from Europe have to adapt to the United States, and people in the United States have to adapt for Europe. So people in the United States waking up at like 6 a.m., 7 a.m.
Yes.
And we start our work day at something like 3 p.m., 4 p.m.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
The most difficult part is when I start working with people from the United States.
Yes.
Then meetings ended. I am continuing writing the code.
Yes.
Until like 5 a.m. And you know what? People from China waking up.
Yes.
Asking me questions.
That then become non-stop.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's another aspect of this global collaboration, and with open source project and with the network everywhere. You can improve the efficiency, but it also brings burdens to people, mental health.
But for people in sales and support, they just work in their time to cover all the globe, and it is well organized.
Okay, great. So in the open source project, right now, how do you engage with different level of people? I mean, there are core contributors. I imagine there are your team and then some really good experts around the world. But there are also mid-level hobbyists, and then maybe there are those visitors.
Mhm.
They just visit and then try to learn something. And how do you engage and make sure that every layer of those community members get what they need?
Mhm. If you talk to someone with multiple levels of experience, some seasoned professional, you can tell everything directly, be rude, telling that this code will not work, so on. But if there is some unexperienced person, you have to help, actively help, and be as friendly as possible.
That's sometimes I think that's hard because you only know that person by a username. Right.
Not only, you also open a pull request and look at the diff.
Okay, and then you can see, wow, that this is a very junior person.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. And in the open source environment, do you have like trainings or get together for all the ClickHouse users?
Unfortunately, no. There were a few events for developers, but very rarely. Just 2 events. And it is difficult since COVID restrictions.
Yes. But maybe from now on, maybe it's kind of more likely to organize these events. Because sometimes I feel like kind of face-to-face, real person interaction is important because they finally kind of connect the email address to a real person, and then it will really help the help the chemistry among the team members.
Yeah, I remember we did a hackathon for ClickHouse, so everyone has to implement a feature through a day.
Yeah, in a day.
And surprisingly, it was successful, but it required a lot of efforts.
Yes.
Basically, we collected the list of features, and we had to prepare and imagine how exactly they can be solved before giving to people.
So basically, you make sure that those problems can be solved within a day.
Yeah.
And then you give to people. We have a Chinese ClickHouse community since 2016. I imagine there will be more interest in ClickHouse and related area. How do you see that in the coming years that ClickHouse in Amsterdam and the user in China can collaborate more?
I think we did not pay attention to Chinese community enough, at least for previous 2 years, for some reason.
Yes.
And we have to catch up.
Yes.
How to do it? Make meetups, invite people to live events in different cities.
For example, because our CSDN has about 40 million users in China. Almost all Chinese developers have an account in CSDN, and then we also organize meetups in different cities. If we have to open a meetup about ClickHouse, then people have to say, well, then at least you should get an expert in ClickHouse visiting, or otherwise people say, well, then that's not kind of authentic enough. But the people that really busy with the coding and development of ClickHouse, and how can they kind of separate the time between really working on the code and then doing community outreach? Or do we have a separate team for that?
No, we don't have a separate team, and I think that engineers should present by themselves. It is not so easy. You have to tell people that it is possible to make a presentation, and you have to start with something. I would not send someone without any public speaking experience to Chinese conference.
Yes.
First, I will make something in Europe, some small event, and then they will believe that it's
prepare those people so that they become an adequate communicator. Great. We definitely look forward to seeing more of these events, and then we are happy to host those events with ClickHouse team. And so looking back, you are doing ClickHouse for about 14 years?
Let me count. Yeah, something like this, something like 14 years.
Yes, I guess that's. I mean, probably you didn't plan. Say, okay, I will work on one project for 14, 15 years. Like when you started in this industry, I mean, do you have any other interest or other plans?
I did not have plans.
Just
Whatever happens.
Yeah. So is Yandex your first company?
Yeah.
And then you just become an engineer and then receive requirements and then you just deal with them.
I did not change companies ever.
Interesting. But in terms of area, so I mean, I guess during early days of Yandex, maybe you have done a lot of other projects. So how come database becomes your main focus?
So I started implementing data processing engine, and it required doing some data structures.
Yes.
And after this, ClickHouse was just one of these data structures. But after it has been used in many different teams, my managers created a separate group for ClickHouse. I was a leader of this group.
So basically, the user need and also the popularity of ClickHouse project kind of drive you from a programmer to a group leader, and then eventually to an open source project leader, and then it goes on. Yeah. So it just happened naturally.
Yeah.
Great. But besides ClickHouse, there are so many different kind of open source projects in GitHub and so is there an end to this ClickHouse product cycle? Like, for example, if we are writing Express sheet, you can get as good as Excel. Probably that's enough. But for ClickHouse, are there more and more requirements coming that is endless? Or you say, oh, there are only 5 things to do, and then if we finish those 5 things, then the ClickHouse will reach the perfect state?
No, it is endless.
Endless, okay.
And more features we implement, even more arise.
Okay. But would that make it, sometimes we, in software engineering terms, we call it the big ball of mud.
Yeah.
because you add in so many layers and so many different things, right? Sometimes people say, well, then this new project might become the old project that it tried to replace in the beginning. So how do we prevent so-called the bad smell of software structure and then the decay of your architecture? And how do you ensure that it's still a well-structured project?
We have to motivate people for code removal. And
code removal?
Yeah,
okay,
code
interesting.
removal and code rewrite. If someone removed 1,000 lines of code, it is way more valuable than adding.
Interesting. Yeah. There's a very common joke that sometimes very badly managed companies will use new line of code to measure the contribution, right?
And ClickHouse is still quite small. What do you think? How many lines of code?
I would think 2 million.
No, less than 1 million.
Less than 1 million.
MySQL has several million.
Yes.
Postgres is the same. MongoDB also. But ClickHouse remains small and compact because we do more with less.
Yes. Yeah, less than 1 million. That's amazing for such a project with such a big scope. But of course, you are not counting like the cloud infrastructure, those peripheral support. Yeah.
I also don't count dependencies.
Yeah, but like you depend on other modules.
Yeah.
Okay. The core code is 1 million. That's but it's still a fairly large size project.
Yeah, fairly large. Maybe you can say that it can fit in one person's head.
Yes, that's interesting because when we talk about software engineering, people always say, well, maybe there's a new tool to really improve program comprehension. But one limiting factor is that even with today's big screen, you can probably only read about 80 lines of code in one screen. And even you have more screens, but you can only focus in one piece. And so that, like in the early days, people say, well, the terminal will show 25 lines of code. So from 25 to 80 something or to 100, that's in that aspect, we are not changing much. So we look at one piece of information at a time, right? So that to be well versed in a 1 million line of code project, when people will wonder like how, if I were a new employee in ClickHouse, like what is your suggestion, advice for me, so that I can learn the inside out of the code?
First, try to implement some small feature requiring changing just a few lines of code.
Okay.
But you will be familiar how to build the code, how everything arranged around, and where these changes have to be located. But sometimes you have to read, and your mood will be lower and lower because you don't understand anything. But
yes,
you continue reading, continue, and after a few days, magic happens, and now you understand.
But your suggestion would be learning by doing, like you have to do something small to learn, instead of like you need to read through the 1 million code before you change one line. No.
Yeah, it's not possible.
Yes. Okay, so basically, and then start from a small area instead of try to comprehend the whole thing. Okay, interesting. But there are people like you really fully understand probably most of the 1 million line of code. Would you say how many people in that team knows all of them?
All of them, no one.
Really?
I also don't understand all of the code, but many people understand like 80%.
So there are so many overlaps.
Yeah.
Okay. So you understand this 80%, and then other people understand the other 80%. So eventually, collectively, the team has a very good understanding of the project.
Yeah. Maybe there are some places in code that no one understands.
But it works.
Yeah.
Interesting. So once a project grows to this big, the regression task, like make sure it doesn't break the old behavior, it becomes more and more important. Do you have a separate team that is focusing on testing, or is testing part of every engineer's kind of a daily requirement?
We don't have a separate team. It is the responsibility of every engineer.
Okay.
And we have some requirements, like every new feature should have a test. Every bug fix should have a test that is proving that this bug is fixed, and also proving that this bug existed.
So we have say the bug show up, and then the bug disappear, and which the code change.
Yeah, and it is controlled by another check. This check will run previous ClickHouse version and run this test, and check that this test failed specifically.
And then your new change will not break any other things. Otherwise, you fix one bug and you just three new bugs. Interesting. And so this system is also built by ClickHouse team. So you don't use external tools to, like this regression tool framework and stuff.
Many years ago, we used Jenkins just for test automation. But it was very unsatisfying.
So you build everything in-house?
Yeah.
Okay. And then in software engineering, there's a term called code coverage. So before the release, what is the number that you have to reach? Say, okay, 80% of the code is covered by all the test cases, or 90%. Is there such a number?
We have many test suites, and we measure test coverage for one of these test suites, the largest functional tests.
Yes.
And for them, it is slightly less than 80%.
Okay.
This is coverage by lines, not by like branches and so on.
Yeah, because in my early days, I was tester. In order to reach the test coverage line, I have to look at the code and say, okay, this branch is not covered, and then I have to construct a very bizarre input to reach that part to improve my code coverage lines.
Yeah, and if you look at this code coverage, you can see that many exception cases are not.
Yeah, basically you have to make sure that like out of memory, out of disk space, network timeout, you have to simulate those events so that you can trigger them. But sometimes it's important because if ClickHouse is used by so many teams in so many different scenarios, right? All sorts of things can happen. So yeah.
And we have to implement fault injection.
Okay.
So we introduce some random errors just to check
like
exceptional cases.
Like when you try to allocate something and say no memory, there's no memory, or some exception.
And we have to do randomized testing.
Randomized testing?
Yeah. Okay. The easiest way to do randomized testing is to take all our tests from the test suite and run them in parallel. And don't check the results. Just check that everything works and use all sanitizers. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Basically, that's one kind of a stress test.
It is named stress test in our code base.
Yes.
This is just one of technique for randomized testing.
Yes. So basically, if the whole system can survive without throwing exceptions or just generate core dump, then it's good, right? Okay, interesting. So a lot of people I know, developers, they prefer, like, I want to write feature code. I do not want to write test code. If you have, for example, some people in your team with that attitude, how do you convince him or her to change?
The code will not be merged.
Okay, so that's simple. Yeah, because in my old teams, the people say, well, like I write it should work. Yeah.
You know, sometimes it is possible to have some change without tests. For example, a change for interactive behavior of command line application. Some of them are covered by expect tool.
By other tools?
Expect.
Oh, expect.
Yeah, but not always. For example, the progress bar sometimes blinking for some reason, flickering.
You mean it's flickering?
Yeah, and you fix that. And you think, okay, it is possible to write a test for a flickering progress bar, but maybe it will not worth it.
Yes.
And then we just merge.
Okay. So basically you have to kind of trust your intuition. Say, I know this area, so this is safe. So basically the policy should not be a burden to people, so that the people say, I'm an engineer, I know what I'm doing, so I can skip that. But of course, then people have to be accountable.
Yeah, you know, we also allow self-review.
Oh, you are self-review?
It is not we don't encourage self-review, but we say, if you are really confident, you can take the responsibility.
Yes.
But we will ask if it was really needed.
Yeah. But what if someone, mistakes happen, right?
Mistakes happen, yeah, it is possible. Then it will be found and we will simply revert.
Okay.
No offense.
Okay. Do you have any, in the software development environment, there are kind of fun things to do, and then there are also some kind of boring things to do, right? Doing the build and stuff. In my old teams, if someone breaks the build, he or she will become the build master. Like he or she has to take care of the build system until the next person breaks the build, and then we change the role. Do you have something similar?
We just revert. Pull request and continue working.
Oh, just revert. You don't. So that the burden will remain. You give back to the person who breaks the build.
Yeah.
And then he or she has to try harder.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So the whole build system and the build verification test, we call it BVT, build verification test, and then smoke test and regression test and then integration test will run in daily?
No, not daily.
Not daily.
For every commit.
For every commit?
Yeah, every commit and also every pull request. So if pull request breaking the build,
Yes.
it will be impossible to merge.
Yes.
But sometimes it will break the build due to desynchronization. In that case, we will revert.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. But if you do the whole verifications for every pull request, does that mean a lot of pull requests have to wait in queue because the bottleneck becomes the build system?
Yeah, actually we have in order of 100 nodes in the cloud to do this testing.
So you use parallelism
Yeah.
to fix that problem. Interesting. But still, that it becomes a very kind of a large-scale engineering system. Yeah. Interesting. And okay, so back to the open source. Besides the assurance that people can look at the code to know what they are using, do you think is there any other advantage that the open source environment bring to ClickHouse?
Yes, especially for engineers. It is always better and much more fun to work on open source.
Because you can talk to the creator of the code?
No, for our engineers. Because you know that you have experience with well-recognized product. It's not something corporate, no one knows what.
So basically you have the worldwide recognition, say, see, that bug was fixed by me.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then the contribution, the recognition is all public and in the open.
Yeah, I also think that code quality is better for open source because you have to take care that everyone can take a look at your code before committing.
Yeah, I say, well, that person has really bad code. Yeah, that's kind of like professional sports. Like you have to show in front of everybody how good you are. I mean, you cannot say some committee says you are good, but no one sees how good you are. So yeah, interesting. So as we talked before the actual interview starts, there are a lot of AI-related progress, right? And then people will think, well, should I still learn, for example, sort or data structure in college? Because right now I can ask Copilot or ChatGPT, say, write me a sort. And then also, I mean, all those algorithms and data structure were already implemented by other people, and then they have been tested. So why should I kind of learn those basic skills?
Maybe you should not, but it will make those who learn even more valuable. They will be able to figure out and fix the AI when it will gone wrong.
Okay, so basically, I think your point is that we cannot assume everything will work. We need the knowledge to deal with the problem if it happens.
You know, maybe there will be less demand for low quality engineers, but the demand for high quality engineers even will increase.
Okay. I'm not sure how you learn, like when you first learn programming. Did you start with C or Basic or Pascal or any other thing?
Basic.
With line numbers.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. So in China, there are also around the world, there are so many colleges and universities. They all teach computer science, right? There are debate about like what is the first programming language to a student, right? Like MIT, they start with a Scheme, and then some start with C and Basic. Right now, people use Python, even Java. So what's your opinion?
I think that it should invite more people to programming. So it should be easy, accessible, maybe visual, maybe something easy to write games, computer games. Maybe it should be Python or even JavaScript. JavaScript is not the best language, but
It's very flexible.
yeah.
Yes. So you mentioned that games and then with some visual so that people can get a sense of achievement.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, one thing that people complain about the old, like the VC, Visual C, is that when it runs, it has a black window, and then it has output, input, output, and then people say, well, it's boring because I think the new generation, they grow up with phones. It's so colorful, and then when you look at a programming screen, it's usually black and white, and you have to type. I think that didn't happen to me, but it happened to a lot of younger generations. They get a sense that, oh, programming is boring because you have to deal with that black and white screen. So maybe we have to, as you mentioned, change it to be more fun.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe people will start with this fun stuff, and then real engineers will think how to hack the system, how to do some low-level stuff.
Like what's underneath that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, but make more people can enjoy programming, and then the real, like, we don't need that many, but the good programmers will eventually find a way to go to the deep stuff. Interesting. And then ClickHouse is a database system, right? We also have a lot of classic database theories. Do you think, when in the college curriculum, do you think people will still need to learn those classic things like DBMS, like compiler, like
Yeah, maybe, but it's not for everyone. So don't try to make all people enjoy this, understand this. Maybe some people just don't need it, even in computer science department. Just introduce people to these problems, but don't insist on full understanding.
So basically, your point is that give people the choice.
Yeah.
And if they are self-motivated, they will learn. If they are not, maybe there are many other areas that they can thrive.
Yep.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Probably one of the last questions that we also talked about earlier. So there are each year in China, there are 10 million college graduates. Probably 10% of them are in computer science related major, like computer science, software engineering, and embedded system, and stuff like that. So people worry that I can only program for probably 10, 15 years until I reach the magic age of 35. They say, oh, now I must find other job because programming is for young people. Is there a similar theme, like they call it year 35 phenomenon? Like, is there similar worry for people in Europe?
If you are a good programmer with unique experience, with a lot of experience and understanding that basically no one else have, you don't have to worry. Take it in the same way as if you are experienced lawyer,
yes, or physician, doctor. So the key is to really develop an area of expertise. But what if the area of expertise happen to be an old technology, like PHP programming?
It's also not a big problem. There is high demand for COBOL programmers, and many COBOL programmers are more than 70 years old.
Yes, especially during Y2K, like year 2000, there's a huge demand for COBOL because they need to fix that year 2000 problem. But I guess nowadays there's not that many. So, I mean, different technology have their also life cycle, right? COBOL, BASIC, they have their own scope. For example, BASIC, I mean, I cannot imagine there's a commercial system written by BASIC, but it's great for introductory. So for a programmer to grow to be a good engineer, besides writing code and join open source project, any others advice you will offer to them?
You have to like it.
Yes.
You have to enjoy it.
So, in your experience, like, I think you work with a lot of people, right? Are there cases that people, for example, participate in this coding programming industry, but then eventually change interest, like they just fade out? They say, okay, I'm more interested in other things, and then they just left?
Yeah, it's totally possible, especially if you have to do a lot of business logic stuff. And you think, no one else exists, nothing else exists.
By business logic, you mean, for example, the kind of a typical CRUD, that create, retrieve, update, delete. Just kind of repeating the same pattern of work to fulfill some business need.
Imagine if you're writing plugins for ERP systems all the time.
Yes. Hopefully those things can be replaced by AI.
And AI will make it better because it will take care of all boring stuff.
Yes. It doesn't have emotional issues. So I think that's fine. Then maybe those people can really have their own interest that they really enjoy. As you mentioned, that the key, I guess, is you'll have to like it. You cannot just convince yourself to go to work every day, because that's hard.
You have to convince, but not all the time. Some part of your work always be boring.
Yes. But there has to be something fun. There has to be a fun element in it so that you can pursue it. Interesting. And then I think open source, I mean, with every programmer, every project can be freely connected. That provides a huge platform. Like if you like it, and then if you want to be better, there's not a better place than in an open source project, I guess. So as you mentioned that there are about 1 million Chinese students, college students, learning programming. From what I have seen, some of them are really passionate, but some just say, well, my parents picked the major for me. I mean, or I heard this major can bring good money, so I learned, but I'm stuck, right? So what's your suggestion to those college students that are learning programming, computer science, software engineering in the current day, and then they also heard that, oh, there's this great AI tool that has come up that will kind of replace those basic programming?
Maybe it makes sense to finish the college, find a job, because despite this AI, there is still time and demand. If someone really don't like computer science, engineering, it's time to change the college to another, maybe. But don't choose something like fine arts.
Why not?
Why not? Because it will also be replaced with AI.
Interesting. So basically, the wave of AI will replace many things. Maybe that's you. And then, if you pick something you really like, at least you enjoy it.
Yeah, even if some area is already replaced by AI, if you enjoy it, it does not matter. Just do it.
Okay. Yeah. So basically, follow your heart.
Yeah.
Follow your passion. And there are, I guess, if you are really like something and then you want to do a good job, there will always be someone who appreciates your work. And then,
even if the only person is yourself.
yes. Well, we can start with that. But basically, a person being self-contented is also very important. Otherwise, you might not have the courage to get up every day to do work. Yes. So basically, I guess that to summarize that, you have to like something and then be happy with the way you do it. And hopefully good things will follow.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Alexey.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then I think we have a good time.
Yeah.